ولا شبيه ولا مثيل له ولا ضد ولا ند ولا جسد ولا صورة ولا أعضاء له. كان الله ولا مكان، فهو الآن على ما عليه كان. فلا تضربوا لله الأمثال ولله المثل الأعلى. تنزه ربي عن الجلوس والقعود وعن الحركة والسكون وعن الاتصال والانفصال. لا يحل فيه شيء ولا ينحل منه شيء ولا يحل هو في شيء، لأنه ليس كمثله شيء. مهما تصورت ببالك فالله لا يشبه ذلك. ومن وصف الله بمعنى من معاني البشر فقد كفر. وأشهد أن سيدنا وعظيمنا وقائدنا وقرة أعيننا محمدا عبد الله ورسوله ونبيه وصفيه وحبيبه وخليله، أرسله الله هدى ورحمة للعالمين، هاديا ومبشرا ونذيرا وداعيا إلى الله بإذنه سراجا وهاجا وقمرا منيرا. اللهم صل وسلم وأعظم وأنعم وأكرم على هذا النبي الكريم سيدنا محمد خاتم النبيين، كلما ذكره الذاكرون وغفل عن ذكره الغافلون. الصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيدي يا رسول الله. الصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيدي يا حبيب الله. الصلاة والسلام عليك يا سيدي يا عظيم الجاه. I praise Allah, I glorify Him and I thank Him for all the blessings that He gives without Him being obligated. And I ask Allah Ta'ala to raise the rank of our beloved Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and to protect His Muslim nation. I testify that no one deserves to be worshipped except Allah, the one without a partner, the one without an equal, the one without a similar, the one who is unlike anything in the universe and nothing in the universe is like Him. He has no father, no mother, no sister, no brother, no son, and no daughter. He exists without time and place because He is the creator of time and place. He does not reside above the throne and He is not attributed with fatigue like the Jews say. Our Lord is glorified beyond any imperfection that the non-Muslims attribute to Him. Whatever you imagine in your mind, Allah Ta'ala does not resemble that. And whoever attributes an attribute of the creations to Allah is outside of Islam. And I testify that Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, the son of Abdullah, the son of Abdul Muttalib, the son of Hashim, the son of Abdul Manaf, from the tribe of Quraysh, is the best creation of Allah and His final prophet and messenger, sent to all humans and jinn, and He is truthful about everything He conveyed of the revelation. Thereafter, we remind ourselves to have the sincere intention for the sake of Allah in attending this session of Islamic knowledge, because having the sincere intention is a requirement to get the reward. So the Muslim, whenever he does a good deed, he has to have the sincere intention for the sake of Allah to get reward for that good deed. The reward is defined as the compensation that the Muslim receives in the hereafter for the good deeds that he did in this life among what makes him happy. An example of the reward that is guaranteed to the righteous Muslim in the grave is that his grave is expanded approximately 105 feet by 105 feet, and his grave is illuminated with a light similar to the light of the full moon, and the fragrance of paradise would be present in the grave. The sincere intention means for the Muslim to do the good deed, seeking the acceptance of Allah only, and not the praise of the people. So alhamdulillah, we are grateful to Allah that He has endowed upon us these great endowments, the endowment of Al-Islam, which is the greatest endowment, that Allah Ta'ala has guided us to be amongst the followers of the best of all creations, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, that Allah Ta'ala has guided us to be members of the best of nations. Allah Ta'ala revealed in Al-Quran, كنتم خير أمة أخرجت للناس تأمرون بالمعروف وتنهون عن المنكر وتؤمنون بالله. Which means you are the best nation brought forth to the people. Yani, you're the best nation that Allah Ta'ala made appear upon the earth. You're the best nation of people that Allah gave life to on this planet. The nation of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Because as you know, the hierarchy of virtue and the hierarchy of status first goes to the prophets. They're the best of all creations. They're number one in terms of their status compared to the other kinds of creations. And the best of all the prophets is Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So the Muslim who is not a prophet, the human Muslim who is not a prophet, his status will be based upon his righteousness. The status of the Muslim who is not a prophet, his status would be based on his adherence to the rules that were revealed to that prophet, that he's from that nation. So since we are the last nation, so then the righteous Muslim, he achieves that status by perfectly following in the footsteps of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And so that virtue of having a status greater than another is then based on the perfection, the level of adherence. So alhamdulillah, we're going to continue on this new book that we started called Collection of Goodness. This is a book that has been translated from the Arabic language, originally called Jami'ul Khayrat, which is a book that is a compilation of lessons that were given in public, in mosques, in different gathering places, for the general public, for the general people, for the Muslims, on separate occasions at different times. And these lessons were given by a great scholar, a great righteous Muslim, a trustworthy imam, a scholar of hadith, a scholar of Islamic law, a scholar of tafsir, a scholar of nahu, which is the Arabic grammar, a scholar of morphology, sarf, which is how to change the structures of certain words, whether they be verbs or whether they be nouns. If you want to say, for example, one singular noun, or if you want to say two of that thing or three of that thing, how do you change it? For example, if you want to say one masjid, you say masjidun. If you want to say two masjids, you say masjidani. And then that would be the morphology, the sarf. The grammar part of it is when you say the difference between when you say masjidani or masjidaini. How would that be determined? By the syntax, meaning the whatever change that word to have it, make it have that ending. So he was a scholar of those sciences as well. So he was definitely a person that whoever learned from him, they definitely benefited. He was a person that definitely had a lot of knowledge to give, and he dedicated his life to teaching Muslims. So we're going to do lesson number 3, because we finished the first class, we did the introduction in lesson 1, and the second class we did lesson 2. Now we're going to do lesson 3. So before that, I want to clarify that I know that last week I had said that hopefully, inshallah, whoever is giving the class, whether it be me or not, will continue in this book. But now there has been a change of plans. سبحان الذي يغير ولا يتغير. So because, and the reason for that, full transparency, is I feel it's more beneficial for everyone to, and it's more beneficial in the larger scale. If the person that is giving the class, other than me, they, for example, do something that they're comfortable with. So it was lack of foresight on my part that I didn't, certain things that occurred that I didn't expect. But alhamdulillah, it's all with a good intention. Because that's what it comes down to. When it comes to calling to al-Islam and teaching al-Islam, when it comes to calling people to the truth, and when it comes to conveying what the Prophet ﷺ taught, it's about benefiting. Because guess what? We're all going to die, we're all going to be in the grave, we're all going to be resurrected on Judgment Day. So nothing matters besides that. So your whatever other things that get in the way of that, they don't matter. What matters is the benefit. What matters is for the Muslim. And what matters is for the person to be Muslim and to be a pious Muslim. However that happens. And it has to happen with the correct knowledge. He has to have the correct information. If he doesn't have the correct information, then he's going to be at risk of going to hell. Do we want anybody to go to hell? No. If somebody, for example, takes the information and they become a good Muslim, whether they follow me or whether they praise me or whether they, shake my hand or give me a hug, that's not the main point. The main point is that person now will save themselves from the hellfire. So there's no room for ego, basically. So there's no room for example, what you want and what your opinion is and what you think should happen. And, oh, this person, they might be getting too confident, so let me do something to clip their wings, or let me do something to bring them down, or let me do something to slow them down, let me do something to, make them feel that, we have the power, or we're the ones that are in charge, or we're the ones that say what goes. It's not going to stop anything. Whatever Allah Ta'ala will to be, shall be. And whatever Allah Ta'ala did not will to be, shall not be. And those with the ill hearts and the ill intentions, they're going to be judged on Judgment Day. And the only thing, and that's why it can't be stopped. Why? Because when a person, the only thing that they're thinking about is, I want to benefit someone. I don't want that person to go to hell. I want this person, for example, to do what's best for their own hereafter. I want them to get reward. I want them to get good deeds. Then how can you lose that way? You can't lose. You might get hurt, yes. You're going to require patience. It's going to be difficult. But like one of my shaykhs, and really one of my shaykhs, because I learned morphology from that shaykh and tajweed in my later years, right before I graduated, which is Shaykh Safe. Everybody knows him. Hafidahullah. On one of his tests, and some Alif students maybe they can testify, but in the university in Lebanon, of course, not the same as in Alif in terms of the degree of, I don't want to say difficulty, but the level that you would need to pass. But on one of his surf tests, and I brought this up to him like years later when I was his apprentice. I told him, do you remember this one test you gave? And I got 100. I didn't get anything wrong, which is rare. When you, at the university level, when you go over there, it's like, one of the professors, he was telling me, like, if any student in my class gets anything above a 50, that means that I didn't make the test right. And that was because, he is really truly like one of those professors that, like, of the old tradition. Like, he was literally handwriting all his tests. He wasn't like typing on a computer. He hand wrote his test, and then so they had to make copies of it and send it out. But he was saying stuff like that. So obviously there was that type of vibe where you're not gonna pass easily. But anyway, so that Shaykh, mashallah, he had a very positive impact on my outlook and the way that I look at things. But he used to say, he said, our path, he said, لَيْسَ مُعَبَّدًا بِالْوُرُودِ. He said, our path is not laid out with flowers. Then that's obvious. So alhamdulillah. But yeah, so basically, only whenever I'm giving a class, then I'll read from the book. There's many benefits to that, and in terms of organization and like following along, so everybody benefits, and also the comfort level for the other teachers when they want to give their class, so they can, be comfortable, etc., and they won't, feel like. And the point is for people to benefit, so for everything to flow. طيب, long introduction, but lesson number 3. We're on page 21 for anyone who has the physical book. For those that read Arabic and understand it, we have a PDF available in Arabic. So whoever wants a copy just needs to reach out, inshallah, and we'll have it sent to them. And for the English, we're still working on getting the physical copies. And I heard rumors that there might be an English PDF as well. So stay tuned for that. But for right now, we're on page 23, page 21, lesson 3. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. عنوان هذا الدرس الثبات على عقيدة أهل السنة والجماعة مع ذكرها. So this lesson is called Remaining Firm upon the Creed of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, along with mentioning it. So this is the title of this class, of this lesson. This lesson was given in Beirut by the Muhaddith, the scholar of Islamic jurisprudence, the Islamic law, Shaykh Abdullah, the son of Muhammad al-Abdari, may Allah have mercy upon him, explaining what Imam Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari confirmed is the creed which the companions of the Prophet ﷺ were on. And this is an important point. Why? Because there are some misguided people nowadays, and they are extremists, and they are unjust terrorists. And they claim that they only follow the Quran and the Sunnah, and they claim that they're the only ones who are doing Islam correctly, who are following Islam correctly, while they're a fringe minority. So that's already a red flag. The Prophet ﷺ, he already told us that those who identify as Muslim will split up into 73 groups, and all of them would be in hellfire except for one. And when he was explicitly defining who that one is, he said the vast majority. He said the congregation. He said those who have the same creed as me and my companions. So the Prophet ﷺ was clear when he made that definition, that the saved group is the majority, and their defining quality is, or what unites them as being the saved group, is that they have the same creed as the Prophet ﷺ and the companions. So, and there are people that came after the time of the companions, that they learned from those companions, and they learned from the followers of those companions, and they became famous. They became famous imams, like Al-Imam al-Shafi'i radiallahu anhu, like Al-Imam Malik radiallahu anhu, like Al-Imam Abu Hanifa radiallahu anhu, like Al-Imam Ahmad. These are all famous. These are all from the saved group. They're all credible Imams of the saved group. And they're also all from the Salaf. So among those famous Imams is this Imam named Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari. He is also from the Salaf, and from the first 300 years. So this great scholar, he came up during a time that there were many misguided people attacking the creed of Islam. And the way that they were attacking the creed is that they were bringing up fallacies, like saying certain things to the uneducated Muslims to confuse them. And so this scholar, basically, he took it upon himself to organize and streamline and simplify the proof of Islam against those deviants that were trying to confuse the Muslims. And so basically he just made things simple, easy to understand for the everyday Muslim, so that they can protect their own heart against the fallacies of the deviants, and so that they can also refute and respond. So that they can also speak up and speak out and defend Islam with their tongues, which is an obligation, of course. We're obligated to order the lawful, forbid the unlawful, and if we're not able to do it physically by force, then we have to do it with our tongue. Now, this lesson was heard by Shaykh Abdul Razzaq, the son of Muhammad al-Sharif, rahmatullahi alayhi, he passed away. Shaykh Samir, the son of Sami al-Qadi, hafidhahullah, still alive. Shaykh Nabil, the son of Muhammad al-Sharif, the brother of Shaykh Abdul Razzaq, rahimahullah and hafidhahullah, who is still alive as well. Shaykh Jamil, the son of Muhammad Halim, and Shaykh Muhammad, the son of Mustafa al-Bakri. May Allah Ta'ala bless them, protect them, have mercy upon them, and benefit us from their blessings. Ameen. So Shaykh Abdullah, may Allah have vast mercy upon him, said, all praise is due to Allah, the Lord of the universe. To him belong the endowments and proper commendations. May Allah raise the rank of our Master Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam and his Muslim relatives, and protect his nation from that which the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam fears for it. Thereafter, we narrated with a connected, authentic chain of narrators in the Jami' of At-Tirmidhi and the authentic book of Ibn Hibban and other than them. So the author started by mentioning that he narrates with a connected chain, going back to Jami' At-Tirmidhi, which is a very famous book in Hadith, and Sahih Ibn Hibban, which is also a very famous book in Hadith, and other than them. So this scholar, he's mentioning that he narrates this hadith with a connected chain to those two books specifically, just for the verification, the authentication, so that a person would know. And also, just FYI, and other than those two, so that a person doesn't think it's only through those two books. So he narrates from those, from the route of Sulaiman, the son of Yasar. From the route of Sulaiman, the son of Yasar. Because in Islam, we have a system of verification. Not just anybody can say anything without it being checked. So especially when it comes to attributing those words to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. When the Prophet alaihi salatu wasallam said something, when he spoke, so the people, they heard him and they said it. So those people that were around him, that followed him, that truly were loyal to him, they would not accept for someone to say that the Prophet ﷺ said something when he really didn't say it. They wouldn't accept for someone to slander the Prophet ﷺ. They wouldn't accept for someone to claim that the Prophet ﷺ claimed something when in reality he didn't. So there was that system where they would check who said this, what's their name, are they considered a liar, are they trustworthy, do they adhere to the etiquettes of their pious peers. If the answer is yes to all those questions, and they have the highest level of that character, then their word is taken. And so you can have 99.999% certainty that that person is telling the truth. that he didn't have a slip of the tongue, that he didn't, for example, that one time chose to lie, right? Because there's human error. Other than the prophets, there's that probability. But when that has been reinforced by a chain of people, so the probability that all those people that are trustworthy and accurate, that they all decided, for example, to that one time tell a lie, or that one time be inaccurate, is very low. But still, and we don't say it's 100% clear-cut definitive, or we don't say it's 100% certain, like the certainty of our senses, like the certainty of the rational evidence, but still, we were obligated to follow. So from the route of Sulaiman, the son of Yasar, and from the route of Abdullah, the son of Umar, a very famous companion, and also righteous Muslim, because the Prophet ﷺ named him like that. The Prophet ﷺ, he called Abdullah ibn Umar Rajulun Salih. Allahu Akbar. And from the route of Amr, the son of Dinar. From the route of Amr, the son of Dinar, that they said, Umar, the son of Al-Khattab, may Allah Ta'ala raise his rank, stood and gave a speech to us in Al-Jabiyah. So he's narrating this incident that happened. All of them were there, obviously. And they all said, we were in this place called Al-Jabiyah, and our master Umar, this is when he was the caliph, radiyallahu anhu. He stood up and he gave a speech. And he said, what did Umar say? And these trustworthy men that are narrating that, they said, we saw Umar get up and give a speech, and he said, the Prophet ﷺ stood up and gave us a speech. So Umar basically copying exactly what the Prophet ﷺ did. He stood up and he gave them a speech. So Umar told them, the Prophet ﷺ stood up and gave us a speech. And he said, أوصيكم بأصحابي ثم الذين يلونهم ثم الذين يلونهم ألا لا يخلون رجل بامرأة إلا كان الشيطان ثالثهما وعليكم بالجماعة وإياكم والفرقة فإن الشيطان مع الواحد وهو من الاثنين أبعد فمن أراد بحبوحة الجنة فليلزم الجماعة ومن سرته حسنته وساءته سيئته فذلكم المؤمن. انتهى. قال الترمذي رحمه الله حديث حسن صحيح. So this hadith, it means, the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam, he said, I instruct you to adhere to my companions, then those that come after them, then those that come after them. Behold, a man will not be alone with a woman except that the devil is the third with them. I instruct you to adhere to the majority of Muslims and beware of being divided, because indeed, the devil is more able to affect the isolated one, and he is further away from two people together. Therefore, the one who wants the enjoyment of paradise, then let him adhere to the majority of Muslims. Whoever is happy by his good deed and disturbed by his bad deed, then that is among the attributes of the complete believer. Allahu Akbar. What a great hadith. So many things, so many benefits in this hadith. So, starting from the beginning, the Prophet ﷺ, he said, I instruct you to adhere to my companions. What does that mean? Follow them. What does that mean? Do what they did. What does that mean? Act like how they acted. Behave how they behaved. And most importantly, have the same belief as them. That's what it means, أُوصِيكُمْ بِأَصْحَابِي. Then those that came after them. Who came after the companions? The tabi'un. And we'll consider a generation like 60 years or 100 years. ثُمَّ الَّذِينَ يَلُونَهُمْ, يعني after the companions, the next generation. And follow them. Do what they did. Behave how they behaved. And most importantly, have the same creed as them. ثُمَّ الَّذِينَ يَلُونَهُمْ, a third time, yani that's third generation, follow them, adhere to them, copy them, do what they did, and most importantly, believe as they did. That's what it means. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that you can't live as a Muslim in this day and age, in 2024, in the age of technology, in the age of electricity and cell phones and things like that. No, it doesn't mean that you can't live with those things because they didn't live with those things. No, it doesn't mean that. Islam is not like that. Islam is not a religion that you can only be a Muslim or a good Muslim. It's not a religion where you can only be a good Muslim if you lived in the year 500 or the year 600 or the year 700. No, you can be a good Muslim whether you're living in 2024 or 2124. Whether you're living in 2024 or 1924. Whether you're living in 2024 or 1724. In all those times, you can be a good Muslim. But what it means is, what was their mentality? Did they let, for example, famine cause them to commit haram? No. Did they let persecution cause them to distance themselves from their Islamic values? No. Did living amongst the non-Muslims cause them to lose their Muslim identity? No. Because there were non-Muslims back then too. There was, for example, a capital of non-Muslim activity back then too. There were places where people went to where it was known for indulging in forbidden desires and drinking and doing drugs, etc. That's not something of this generation or this era. That's been going on for centuries and centuries. So what did those Muslims do? They stuck to the deen. They were sincere. They did good deeds. They learned. They became pious Muslims. And that's how they were successful. So we have to, if that's what we want as well, for this nation or for our time or for our era or for our community or for our household, right? If we're thinking individually, for our lives, then we know what we have to do. Adhere to the rules of Islam. Then the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "Behold, a man will not be alone with a woman except that the devil is the third with them." This is a proof for the prohibition of a male and a female that are marriageable to each other being alone in the same place without a third person. And the Prophet ﷺ, he said, "I instruct you to adhere to the majority of Muslims." And the rest is going to be explained. So the author said, the hadith means, "I instruct you to adhere to my companions, then those that came after them, then those that came after them. Behold, a man will not be alone with a woman except that the devil is the third with them." That means it's forbidden for a man to be alone with a woman in a way that no third person can see them. He said, "I instruct you to adhere to the majority of Muslims and beware of being divided, because indeed the devil is more able to affect the isolated one, and he is further away from two people together." So one example of that in the worldly life that is easy to understand, when you have a sheep, when you have a flock of sheep, does the wolf usually attack the whole flock? No, because the shepherd is there, the other sheep, for example, can block the wolf. But if the wolf sees that there's a sheep that has gone by itself on its own, right? It's a stranded sheep. Then what's the wolf gonna say? The wolf is going to find that easy prey. The sheep that has gone off on its own and is not together with the flock is easier for the wolf to eat than the sheep that is inside of the flock. Because it's numbers. It's what they call strength in numbers. Therefore, the one who wants the enjoyment of paradise, then let him adhere to the majority of Muslims. Whoever is happy by his good deed and disturbed by his bad deed, then that is among the attributes of the complete believer. This hadith contains important matters. The first is the importance of following the companions, because they are the ones who conveyed Islam to those that came after them. And if it weren't for them, we would not have known what the religion of Islam is. And they are the ones who conveyed to us the Quran, and they are the ones who witnessed the revelation of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we are definitely indebted to them. We are definitely indebted to the companions, because if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have this information. And we would not have known what the Prophet ﷺ taught. The second matter is the prohibition of the khalwa between a man and a marriageable woman, not his wife or female slave, because basically in Islam there's two ways, and only two ways, for the sexual relations to be permitted, for the sexual relations to be permissible without sin. And the most common way nowadays is for sure through marriage, but also if the Muslim has a female slave, which is a very specific situation that the Muslim can achieve, but it's a very specific situation. It is not to be confused with the unjust slavery that the Americans did to mostly black people for 600 years, 400 years, for such a long time. Such a heinous and atrocious thing. But in Islam, it's not like that. In Islam, there's only basically two ways that a person could be a slave. The first is that they're born that way. The second way is if they were a soldier or a member of the opposing army and they got captured by the Muslims, or they surrendered, or they were defeated, and the ones that survived, they automatically become slaves. They automatically become property. And so either the Muslim ruler, he sets them free, or he sells them, or he gives them up in ransom. But if he doesn't sell them, he keeps them, then and they, for example, get married and have children, then they have that's how more slaves occur. But you can't just go, for example, to a free man and put a black bag over his face and kidnap him and put him on a ship and now supposedly he's a slave. You can't do that. And that's what the Europeans did, basically. Or they said, hey, come on over. We're going to give you 40 acres. We're going to give you this. It's the new world. We're going to build it up. We need farmers. We need this. We need that. Come on and start your new life, new investment opportunity. And then as soon as they get on the ship, they get hit in the back of the head, or they get, shackled, and now they're crossing the ocean and they've been basically kidnapped. So that's not valid. Someone does not become a slave that way. That is, the prohibition of the man to be alone with a woman that is marriageable to him in a place where they are not seen by a third person. So a man and a woman who are marriageable to each other. What does that mean, marriageable to each other? It means it's not like the father and his mother, or like a son and his mother, or a father and his daughter, or a man and his niece, or a man and his grandma, etc. These people, even though they're the opposite gender, but Islamically, it's invalid and forbidden to have relations with them, and you can never marry them. So even if they do the contract according to the Islamic way, etc., it won't be valid, it won't go through. So there's certain people you cannot marry. These are called, in Arabic, mahram, non-marriageable. So if someone's not marriageable to you, you can, for example, sit in the room by yourself with them. You can, for example, if she's a woman, you can see her without her hijab. You can, for example, have skin-to-skin contact, of course, without desire or lust. And even your wudu would not be broken. But if she's a stranger, if she's not your sister, and she's not your aunt, and she's not your mom, and she's not your grandma, and she's not, for example, your stepdaughter, that you married her mom and had intercourse with the mom for the first time, and then after that, so now that's your stepdaughter if she had a daughter from a previous marriage. So now that she becomes your stepdaughter, and now you can never marry her, even if you divorce her mom, etc. So these people that they originally are strangers. These women that originally are strangers, you can't be with them alone in a place where there's no third person. It's forbidden. Even if they're not doing anything sexual, even if they're not, for example, flirting, just being by themselves in a room where no third person can see them, if they are both at an age where they are normally desired, and they're not marriageable, and they are marriageable to each other, then they cannot be in the room by themselves. That the Prophet ﷺ, that judgment was revealed to him, and he conveyed that. The Prophet ﷺ explained the reason for the prohibition when he said, "Except that the devil is the third with them. Because indeed the way for fornication to occur the most is through being alone with a marriageable woman." And everybody knows that, especially in our society now. And the way that people, they think about these things in today's society and in the Western world and the secular world, that's how things get started. One thing leads to another. When a man is alone with a woman, the devil intensifies on him to pull him to fornication. That is, it is easy for the devil to pull the people to fornication while alone in a way that he is unable to when a man and a woman are not alone. When two people are alone, there's whispers, there's things that happen within themselves that could, cause that to happen. But when people are in a group, usually people are posturing, usually people are putting on, that mask that they put on for the public, and they want to project themselves a certain way, and they want to have a certain image, and they want people to think that they're smart, or that they're friendly, or that they're easygoing, etc. So they act a certain way, even though on the inside they feel different. For example, on the inside, it'll be like a group of people, let's say males and females, even though it's not Islamically praised for marriageable men and women, males and females, to be together, mixed together in a group socially. Now, of course, without touching and without exposing any unlawful nakedness, but just men and women together, chit-chatting, socializing, even without anything forbidden, it's not Islamically praised. But let's say that that's happening, right? It's not a sin for it to happen, but it's not praised. Let's say that that's happening. For example, this male is talking to that female, or everybody's talking. That male, for example, might have it in his head, wow, that girl is so pretty, I'm in love with her, I want to marry her, etc. But on the inside, but on the outside, you could never tell that he feels that way, or that he thinks that way, because he's in that social group, social setting. So he's trying to act a certain way. He's trying to maybe seem serious, or seem respectable, or seem honorable, whatever people do. I'm not an expert about that. I don't know about that, but normally what people do. Or for example, that girl, she might think, oh, that guy, his eyes, the color of his eyes, he's dreamy, or this and that. But if you look at her face, you might think that she's disgusted by the guy. If you're looking at her face and her body language, you might think that she thinks this guy is, like the dirt on her shoe. But on the inside, she's head over heels and she is admiring the guy. But on the outside, you would never guess that. So things like that happen when it's in a public space amongst other people. But behind closed doors, if that same man and that same female were together, because nobody else is around, nobody's looking, nobody's going to say, oh, someone might say a simp, or you're this, or you're that, or you're not acting in a way that's supposedly the one that has the upper hand, and that you're the one that's chasing instead. No, and that when people are in private, then they act different, they talk different. That girl, for example, might laugh at something that she wouldn't laugh at if she was in front of people. And that guy might say something to her, like, I really like your shirt, or something like that he wouldn't say when he's in front of people, etc. So this shows the truthfulness of Islam. That the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned that, and that's something that all of us, or people, can obviously see that. And the Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith, I instruct you to adhere to the majority of Muslims and beware of being divided, because indeed the devil is more able to affect the isolated one, and he is further away from two people together. This is a command from the Prophet ﷺ to this nation, and a command to his nation, to adhere to the creed of Ahlul Sunnah, which the Prophet ﷺ taught his companions. So the Prophet ﷺ, he ordered us in this hadith to adhere to the congregation. Yani, for us to stick to the majority. الرسول صلى الله عليه وسلم قال في هذا الحديث وعليكم بالجماعة وإياكم والفرقة فإن الشيطان مع الواحد وهو من الاثنين أبعد. انتهى. هذا أمر منه صلى الله عليه وسلم لأمته بالتمسك بعقيدة أهل السنة والجماعة التي علمها رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم صحابته. So the Prophet ﷺ, he is ordering us to adhere to the creed of Ahlul Sunnah, which the Prophet ﷺ taught his companions. And how do we know this creed? How do the majority of Muslims have this creed? Because the Prophet ﷺ taught it to the companions, and the companions, they learned it from the Prophet ﷺ, and those companions, they taught it to others that came after them, and those others, they taught it to others that came after them, and those others, they taught it to others that came after them, and so on and so forth until reaching our generation, without that ever being lost, without there being a gap or any stop. Why is that important? Because the Wahhabis, they claim we don't follow anyone that came after the first 300 years. They claim, that's what they claim, but it's not true. They claim we only follow the companions, we only follow those first 300 years. Anyone that came after that, we reject them. But their main leader, which is Ibn Taymiyyah, he came 600 years after the Prophet ﷺ. Then they taught it to those after them, then they also taught it to those after them until it reached this time that we are in. And this creed, which the companions were on, is still present among the vast majority of the Muslim nation. The vast majority of the Muhammadan Muslim nation, yani the nation that's attributed to the Prophet ﷺ, from the first generation up until this time, has been on this creed, upon that creed. So from the time of the Prophet ﷺ until now, if you look at the numbers, the majority of the people who identify themselves as Muslims have the creed of the Prophet ﷺ and the companions. So the Prophet ﷺ instructed his nation not to deviate from that creed. And we are grateful to Allah that up until our time, the vast majority of the Muslim nation is upon this creed that the Prophet ﷺ instructed them to adhere to and not to deviate from. And that's part of what makes us amongst the best of the nations, that our creed remains intact. Right now, if a person goes around in the lands of the Muslims, in the east, west, north, and south, he will find their scholars upon one creed. And so at the time that this lesson was given, and I'm thinking that this lesson is probably from the 70s or the 80s. So at the time that that lesson was given, these are the numbers that are related to that time. Nowadays, those numbers are multiple times higher. For example, here it says Indonesia has 170 million Muslims. This was at the time that the Shaykh was giving the lesson. Nowadays, I would say it's over 500 million. But I'm not a statistician, but you can check the numbers. But it should be more than 500 million. All of their scholars are upon the creed of Ahlul Sunnah, the Ash'ari creed, which is the creed of the companions. It is called Ash'ariyya because Imam Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari confirmed this creed with proofs from the Quran and the sayings of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and with the mental proofs. Because during his time, plenty of people deviated from that creed. And so this great Imam, may God have mercy upon him, took it upon himself to defend the creed of Ahlul Sunnah by explaining their proofs from the textual and intellectual aspect. And so this creed, which is the creed of the companions and whoever followed them up until the time of Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari, was called the Ash'ari creed. And so whoever remained upon the creed of the companions was called an Ash'ari. He did not come with a fundamental that goes against what the companions were on. Rather, he delved into explaining the proofs to extinguish the deviations of those Mu'tazila, Khawarij, those who attribute bodily attributes to Allah, the Dahriyya, and the Taba'i'iyyin, and other than them among the non-Muslims. So basically there's these, like we said at the beginning, the Prophet ﷺ told us, those who identify as Muslim, they're going to split up into 73 groups. So all of them are going to be in hell except for one. So out of those 73 groups, there's different names. So there's one group called the Mu'tazila, and they're a blasphemous group. Why? Because one of the things that they believe, which is all Muslims know that this is incorrect, but they call themselves Muslims. They claim to be Muslim, but they say something that even a 5-year-old Muslim would tell you that that's incorrect. They believe that the human being creates his own deeds. They believe that the human being, when he moves his hand, he's creating that deed, which is blasphemy, of course, because only God creates. So those are the Mu'tazila. Then there's the Khawarij, which is also, they also have blasphemous creeds amongst their creeds. So amongst the blasphemous things that they say is that whoever is not part of them is a non-Muslim, and that's blasphemous. And those who attribute bodily attributes to Allah, these are called Mujassima in Arabic, Mushabbiha, and the ones who teach that creed nowadays the most are called Wahhabis. They falsely call themselves Salafis, but in reality they're Wahhabis. Why? Because they follow a man named Ibn Abdul Wahhab, and that person, he was born 1,000 years after Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So it's very strange how they say, yeah, we follow the Salaf, we follow Quran, we follow Sunnah, but you literally, your movement started with a guy that was born 1,000 years after the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who had the audacity to say that all the Muslims during his time, they had committed blasphemy and there was no more Muslims on the earth except for that guy, and that he came to call the people back to Islam. This is blasphemy, of course. But the reason that they blaspheme, among the reasons they blaspheme, is because they believe that God has organs. They believe that God has emotions. They believe that God lives in heaven. They believe that God goes up and down. They believe that God exists in a place. All these things are bodily attributes. All those things are blasphemy. Today, the creed of Ahlul Sunnah, it is the creed that hundreds of millions of Muslims are upon. The scholars of Indonesia, Egypt, all of the Levant. The Levant is Ash-Sham, the lands of Jordan, Syria, Palestine, parts of Turkey, Lebanon, parts of Iraq. This is called Ash-Sham. Yemen, which are very famous nowadays. Iraq, Turkey, Afghanistan, India, Africa, Abyssinia, Somalia, South Africa. All of them are upon this creed, which is called today the Ash'ariyya. The Shaykh, may Allah have mercy upon him, meant what also includes the Maturidiyya, because there is no difference between them in the fundamental aspects of the creed, and Ahlul Sunnah in our days include only these two groups. Yani, there was another scholar named Abu Mansur al-Maturidi, and basically he was a contemporary of Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari, but they lived in separate parts of the Muslim world, and they never met each other. But they both were facing the same problem, that deviance had spread, and many layman Muslims were being confused by the fallacies of the deviants, and so they took it upon themselves to streamline, simplify, outline the proofs of Ahlul Sunnah so that those Muslims can protect themselves and also so that they can refute the deviant people. And it is the creed of the companions, the followers of the companions, and the followers of the followers of the companions, up until it reached the era of Abu al-Hasan al-Ash'ari. Then it continued and it became established among the vast majority of the nation of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam up until today. So first, that background, is that it is in line with the first 300 years. So now, after giving that background and confirming that that creed is the creed of the companions, we're going to now tell what that creed is. This creed is confirming the existence of Allah, which is not preceded by non-existence, and that everything other than Allah was non-existent, and then it came into existence. The kind of the universe and its individuals, all of that has a beginning. None of that is eternal without a beginning, with Allah. And none of that existed while Allah was existing without a beginning. And this is the part that the Wahhabis can't understand. And that's all you need to know and to say when you talk to them, when you are trying to prove the truth to them. Because they believe that Allah is sitting on the throne, or established on the throne, or hovering above the throne, or residing above the throne, all of which are blasphemy. So what they don't understand is that the throne has a beginning. And some of them, they do admit that. So I have come across some Wahhabis that they do admit that Allah is the creator of the throne, which is very surprising. But yes, they have admitted it. Some of them have admitted it. If they admit that, then that's it, it's done. If they say Allah is the creator of the throne, that means that the throne did not have a beginning, and Allah Ta'ala already existed. So Allah existed without the throne. And after He created it, His existence did not change. And that's something that both sides agree, that you cannot attribute change to Allah. Or that's something that they would outwardly agree to. Why? Because if they openly say that Allah changes, then everybody that's watching would know that they're blasphemers. Because all the Muslims know, the regular Muslims, the uneducated Muslims, the day-to-day Muslims, they know Allah is not attributed with change. Because change is the attribute of a creation. So in eternity, no beginning, nothing existed other than Allah. So you cannot imagine Allah. But the mind can verify that the Creator has no beginning. Because had He had a beginning, then He wouldn't be the Creator. Because whatever has a beginning is by definition a creation. So nothing other than Allah existed. No light, no darkness, no place, and no time. Because time is defined as comparing something that begins with another thing that begins. And Allah was not preceded by non-existence. As for everything other than Allah, all of that was non-existent. Therefore, time and place have a beginning, and they did not exist eternally. Likewise, light, darkness, and air. This is all among the creed of Ahlul Sunnah. The second matter is that Allah does not resemble anything, because if He were similar to anything of the universe, He would not be the creator of the universe. And that everything that changes from one state to another has a beginning. And this is a proof that the universe has a beginning. It did not exist and then it existed. Ibrahim alayhi salam, when he showed the invalidity of the creed of the people of his town, and he was in Babylon, a land in Iraq, he was born there, and his family and others among the humans at that time, all of them were non-Muslims except the son of his brother, Lut alayhi salam. In English, he's known as Lot. So there was a prophet named Lot, and he was the son of Prophet Abraham's brother. So he was Prophet Abraham's nephew. So only Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, Prophet Abraham alayhi salam, and Prophet Lut, Prophet Lot, and Prophet Ibrahim's wife, Lady Sarah, Those were the only Muslims on the earth at that time. They were Muslims, and everybody other than them among the humans were non-Muslims. They used to worship the stars, the sun, and the moon. Yani the people on the earth at that time, except Prophet Ibrahim and Prophet Lut and Isa. Everybody else worshipped the sun and the moon and the stars. Ibrahim alayhi salam used as a proof for the invalidity of worshipping the sun, the moon, and the stars, that they changed from one state to another state. That is, oh you people, you worship something that changes from state to state. The sun changes from state to state, and the moon changes from state to state, and the stars are like that. How can those qualify to be worshipped? Rather, the one who is worshipped rightfully is the one who makes those things change from state to state. Because it is not mentally possible for them to create themselves, and it is not mentally possible for them to change themselves from state to state. So he explained by this that the Creator does not change from state to state, because if he were like that, he would have been in need of someone who changes him. If he had been similar to the universe in any aspect, he would have been like the creations, and he would have been in need of a Creator that brings him into existence. This is the creed of Ahlul Sunnah, to clear Allah from being attributed with place, direction, they see that a part of it is taken literally and that a part of it is not taken literally, but rather it is interpreted with meanings that are befitting to Allah, that are not among the attributes of the creations. And this is where the Wahhabis fail, because they interpret the whole Quran literally. What does that mean literally? Yani physically. What does that mean?